Hi, Aaron.
Hello. How's everyone doing today?
Okay.
Pretty good,
Cool.
except for that, apparently.
It's all good. Share my screen. And we'll get started about 35 after the hour. Give folks time to come in. And I'm going to remember to do a transcript. Because I keep forgetting to do that. Hi, Lauren. So welcome everyone. For those just joining us, we'll get started at about 12:35 my time, just to give folks time to come in to the room. Looks like we'll have a small crowd today, but hopefully there's a lot to talk about. Just one more minute, we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. So welcome everyone to the Torus community meeting for March. I'm Erin Serwinski. I think most of you know me. I'm the product manager for the Open Assignment Toolkit. I also manage learning engineering course development for the Open Learning Initiative. And today we're going to dive in to talk about course section administration. And what that means is being able to select a course to use from our system, our platform, using the course builder. And I'm going to walk through that a little bit to just remind everyone how that's done and the options that are associated with that. This conversation can also expand to talk about managing payment and even maybe course section versions, like how I'd be interested to know if many of you create new course sections anew from the latest package. That's our terminology for the repository of resources that make up a course. And then different settings in terms of setting up your course. And then how do you usually administer that? Is it through an LMS? Do you guys use course keys primarily? How does that work out for you? And then getting students in the section, which is kind of similar to the discussions around LMS and course key. So, I mean, these were just I'm sure we'll think of other things that are part of this whole piece, chunk of functionality that we need to consider. And what I'm really looking for is prioritization. So right now we're working on a plan for migrating all of our courses to the new system. And as you can imagine, part of that is lining up the functionality needed to exist in Torus before we can pull any course that uses that functionality over. So trying to line those up in terms of content functionality. So for example, the language courses need certain types of activities that the other courses don't use. So we want to make sure that we line up when we build that functionality, then we can bring the language courses over. But on top of that, we also need to prioritize when system delivery features and setup features exist in Torus as well, so that, we don't move all the language courses over, but then you still can't deliver them because of some other piece of functionality for delivery of courses isn't there. So that's what I'm trying to get, kind of a prioritization of those features. And I'll show you a list later. Just thinking about what would be the most absolute critical needs for course delivery versus what are nice to haves. What is most used now versus, oh, well, we don't really use these settings very much, kind of discussion I'd like to have. So the discussion points, I'm going to do a quick demo of our course builder to just get a sense of what some of those features are that we're talking about. And then really it's very simple, what to keep, what needs to change. I'm going to show off the list of course section admin features that we have, in addition to what might not be seen in the course builder. And really, I should put here prioritization, because that's really what I'm looking for more than anything. We're going to, of course, build all this functionality. It's a matter of what's most critical now. So I'm going to pull up this discussion notes, because for those of you who've come regularly, I just kind of try and keep up taking notes as folks are discussing these things. And then I want to dive into showing you guys a course builder. So let's start there. So some of you might not even do this. I don't know. Sometimes we have folks who get help setting up their course sections. I think most folks can do this in a self-service way. So I'm in OLI, our delivery platform, legacy delivery platform, as it exists today. And I'm an instructor, and I'm going to create a new course. So right off the bat, you get asked about the simple advanced mode. We always tell people to just go with the simple mode, because everything you can do in advanced mode you can do once you set your course up in simple mode. And I'll show you what that means. I'm not even going to go into advanced mode. I'll just show you what those features are. But we start by selecting, this is what I was referring to earlier as the package. So this is a list of courses that are publicly available for folks to set up as and teach from. And, you know, the list takes a little while to load. But we're going to get the full experience here so that we can discuss any and all about the experience of doing this. And then you have this list. And so this is all the publicly available. If I was logged in as an admin, you'd see a lot. You'd see every version of all these and things like that. But what we do is for the public facing packages that we have, we put out usually the latest version. So, and that doesn't need to be exposed unless it does. So think about that. So let me just pick one. I didn't really think about what I was going to select here as a demo, but I will pick,
Try a language one.
pick a language one. Okay. Are there a lot of options in the languages? So,
No,
because
not
usually,
really.
because the next step is then it shows the list of potential organizations. And so if a course has multiple organizations, and for those of you who might not know what organizations are, and yes, does, see, it's different packages, it's different content to serve to different audiences, I guess I could say. If someone else has a better description, I'm all for it. But basically, it's a scope and sequence. All the content is in a package, and then an organization can be some subset of that content, and it can be reused between the different organizations. It's just a different scope and sequence of the same content, essentially, or a subset of it. Or you can always create an organization that has all of the content that exists, and then you add maybe some that only you want for that particular organization. So a good example I use is if you want, if you want to build a course like anatomy and physiology, say, but then you want to build a special version of that for a specific audience like nurses, or and you want to add some content that might be relevant to just that audience. It's an example. So when you get, I'm sorry.
We do have options like that under both elementary French and 1 and 2. So that might be a good place to start.
Oh, you have additional options even after you select these. Oh, even better. So French is a package of all the French content. Then we have these options. You can do elementary French 1. You can just build a course of just the exams, or French 2, or the exams for French 2. We'll just pick one. And then within that, sometimes, for statistics, we have even more options. And again, the timing of this is always, kind of, oh, and it's failing. Huh. I think I waited too long. It's touchy. So I'm going to go back through that process. I guess I talked too much between the actions. Who knows, my internet might have blipped or something. Actually, I'm just going to go back and start it all over because I think that's probably the best approach. So we can already probably take some notes just about the length of time it takes to do all of this. There we go. Let's pick French again. We'll see how that works out for us. And Mark, I have to admit, you have really nice descriptions and titles for these different organizations. That's not always the case with our courses. I even like this full course description here. I've never actually, at the risk of having to start this all over again, I kind of want to see what that is. It takes you to a link that is broken. Okay, that's great. We'll figure that out, I guess. Okay, here we go. So even with elementary French, you have specific options. Now this is done in our stats course as well, where you can, if you select probability and statistics, you can then also select what instructions you want to default to the students in terms of the exercises and activities. So like we offer different instructions for the activities based on if you're using Excel or, StatCrunch or forget what else, Minitab, I think is another option. And it doesn't mean that students can't toggle to the other instructions. It just means what will be set up as the default. Does that work the same here, Mark?
Basically, we've gotten requests where in the full course, there are some instructor graded items in the lesson tests, and we have institutions that say, we don't want to do that for our several hundred students. So we took all the instructor graded questions out of the lesson tests. That's what the partial lesson test versions are all about. So it's literally fully computer scored, versus one instructor actually has to put their finger in.
Great. So like even within, so obviously we don't want to lose the ability to have these like kind of options within options or menu, like a hierarchy of menus to select content. I'm gonna make the online, I'll do the online complete course. So then when you select which course you want to build a course section for, hit the next. And this usually takes a little bit of time as well because it's basically building the course in the background from the options that you selected. I believe, and in future meetings, I'll go over some demos of Torus and how Torus handles this a little bit differently in the sense that we have products that can be created from different projects. And so that translates from, a package would equal a project, and a product, I believe right now what will equal like an organization, or even maybe take the place of all these different options and you just have a flatter list of options. Not sure yet how that'll work, but we'll figure that out. So these dates don't really control anything. It's just, if you want them to have what you want displayed to the students, essentially. And then you select the title, you select an institution, and a course key. And this course key can be, it has to be unique because this is how most students get in unless you're using an LMS. So let me just guarantee that that's not going to be used. And then here is some other information like pricing. And this right now is, I'm not really sure how it's controlled. I think when we publish the course that gets put on there. And
Yeah, that's correct. You specify it for the deployed production.
Okay. Yes, right. And we call those products in the background.
Yeah. Pricing is preset on a per organization basis when the package is configured, and an administrator can go to the manage course page and override the price, whether to remove it or change to a different product.
Thanks, Jane. That's very helpful. Let's see if there's anything else here. We'll get into scheduling and, adding students and instructors in a bit. So I'm just going to finish this, and this will build the course with these specifications or the course section, I should say, with these specifications. And we'll just give it a minute, and then I'm going to circle back because the best way I've found to build a course section is then to make sure that this section is built. I see it. This is the manage course page. So these are some other controls that we'll talk about later. but giving you a sense of how, who the instructors are. You can add TAs, you can add students. You can, an administrator can go in here. If I was in with my admin account, I'd have some controls here to remove the product. At the same time that the pricing is determined on publish, it's also grace periods and things like that are also requested at that time. So that when a course section is built, it has these kind of automatic grace periods and pricing built in. So then when a student goes into this course, either through their LMS or with a course key, they'll be prompted to pay. They can, and please forgive me if or someone correct me if this is wrong, but they'll be prompted to pay. I think they have the ability to like defer payment as long as this grace period is in place. Then we'd have to pay by the grace period. So that's how that works. That's the features we have. Let's see, from here, you can also go right to, this is an instructor view of the course. You can go to the dashboard. This show student mastery is a checkbox that allows students to see kind of a subset of our learning dashboard. It's a different view for them, but it shows them like the progress they've made and I think they can dig in to see, the questions that they've answered. But that's for another meeting. From here, you can also go right to the course and view the syllabus, just like the students do. Although as an instructor, I have these grade book and learning dashboard links. Let me go back to manage course, and it doesn't seem like there's a easy way to do that. So that's another thing to think about. So I'm going to go into edit course settings because that's where we can see some of the scheduling and assessment options and the ability to add content. But from here, you can also just copy this section. So if you want to all the same setup for your next semester's course as this one, you can copy it. And again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but it will copy all of the scheduling. And if you've added additional content from another course package, I think it will copy this section in all its settings so that you can just go from there. However, we try to still steer people away from that because we're putting out new versions of these courses all the time. And so if you don't create a course from the package and go through the course builder like I just did, you will miss out on any updates, typo fixes, things like that, because you'll literally be copying this section and the course as it was in that stage and time, place and time. And then you can delete the section, but I don't know actually how that works and if you actually are deleting it or not. That's a question for Jean. Do you know the answer to that?
Have to reach the unmute. No, to the best of my knowledge, it does delete everything.
Okay.
And I try to do that faithfully on things I've done for testing, just to reduce the amount of hair to wade through.
Right.
And in some cases, it may be simpler if there's a number of things that haven't ended up the way you wanted. Just delete it and start again,
Right.
however unattractive that might be. But yeah, you delete it, it's gone.
Even if you have students in it?
Well,
the error message that you get, or the warning message you get, says yes, it deletes all the student data.
Oh, okay.
But historically, the only things I've deleted are things that had no roster and no progress. But recently, there was someone who had been testing something in production. That's a different question. And they said, how can I delete this? And when I went to delete it, it wouldn't until I went and removed everyone from the roster.
Interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah. Now, don't know if removing somebody from a course's roster removes their records until the course is deleted. But, that's a question for another time.
Right, right. And by the way, I've already been in the discussions with developers around, being able to delete courses sections from your My Courses list. And then what does that do if there is progress and data in the background? We want to preserve that and still be able to access the student records, but we just, want to give the flexibility of allowing instructors to just not see it anymore. There's also the ability in the new system, I think there's a delete, but then there's also an archive where you can just like archive it and not see it in your list anymore. But it's still there. So there's some new types of controls coming with Torus. I did want to say one more thing about delete section, and I forgot what it was, but that's okay. So let's just go into these course settings, and this is the best way to go back in and see. Here is, if you go back into the course builder, once you've built the course, you can see these types of things. So selecting the curriculum. So this is the content. This is the French course that I just built a course section for. And now I have the ability to add content from anything else that exists, essentially. So if I want to add, I'm hoping that this will all work.
Add a final.
What was that? Add the final? Okay.
Yeah, which is what we've been recommending.
Oh, good. Okay, so there's a use case right there. But I've known other use cases where, for example, folks want to also teach our Collab U or Conflict U, which is a small kind of companion course. And they just want it all in the same course section. So I can essentially pick, anything to add to this. But okay, to Mark's suggestion, I would go back into French again. Is that correct? Is it not on my list now? That's interesting.
I think it's now listed elementary French 1, the exams 1.14.
Ah, there we go. So just, just to walk you guys through this experience. So this is what that separate package is that we want to add. And now when I do click through, it added it to, it should have added it. You did see me select that, right? This happened to me the other day too, by the way, when I was testing this out, where I didn't see it. I'm just going to hit update and I'm going to go back in and see what happens. Oh, I didn't mean to cancel. A lot of room for improvement in this experience, obviously. Oh, so now I'm going to find.
You don't have to create it. Yeah, go.
Yeah.
I think you've gone to.
I should have gone to manage course. Yes,
Yeah.
You're right. Because now that's going to be, I'm going to have to go right back. I'm trying to look to see if it did add, if that was successful at all.
Nope.
No, it wasn't. Interesting. Okay, let's try this again. Add curriculum. Is anything happening? Anything at all?
Remember, you've got a large list of curricula.
Right? I have to stop that. I don't have the patience. I'm gonna go back in and try it again. By the way, a while ago, Hal and I spent a lot of time just reviewing this whole process and had come up with a better workflow. But it is what it is. And now I don't even know where it took me. Okay, I'm back to select elementary French exams. I'm selecting this. Okay, that's what I want. I hit next. It's still not working. Well, I guess I can just explain what usually happens. I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe
I think you actually have to hit the green arrow on the right-hand side to select it before you update.
Oh, so I'm missing a step here.
Yeah.
Hey, I think demoing this is just fine. This is what folks go through. You know, a lot of room for improvement, and we'll come back and probably be able to capture a lot of ideas for improvement after showing this. Okay.
Next.
That's what happened last time, Mark. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Green arrow.
These.
Do the bottom one.
Okay. Oh, well, I guess I would do. So I can select which modules
Yeah.
at the module level. Can I
Yeah.
click that? Okay.
Yep.
And by the way, that is another good note to make, that you can only add content in these big chunks. You can't like select pages at the page level. So now, thank you. I will, obviously I don't do that a lot. And now it's here, final exam. And now I can move it if I want to move it up or anything like that. If it's a piece of content I want to come before one of these, I can move it. And actually I can rearrange any of this content using the arrows. So now I'm going to update that. And now that final exam is added to the course. And I can just click through, update, shouldn't need to change anything else. So this was another aspect of the course builder I wanted to show, or the scheduling, or the course section capabilities. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to move my Zoom window somewhere where I can get to this. Okay, so this is assignments and scheduling. It automatically took me to that, but if you ever need to get back to it, you can just select this side link. And this is a place where you can put in any gating and scheduling that is available. So even at the quiz level, I think it's at the, let's see, the module level, quiz level, controls, scheduling controls. So what we can't do is do dependent gating. So I can't say, oh, a student has to complete all of this and then it'll unlock the gate. It's done through dates and times. So you can schedule, but I can imagine if you want to set up your course, and this is one of the reasons why copy course section is used, because if you take the time to go in here and gate and schedule all of these, you know, I can imagine you don't want to do it over again. And it's much easier to just copy this section with all those controls than to redo it. So again, I just clicked on this quiz. And I can have some more variety of controls there, like to show it or hide it in the grade book. And then I can schedule dates. See, I can change just in time, or I can schedule it for a specific date. And then I can also go to it and look up certain students and give them exceptions to the due dates. And I believe you could do grace periods too, but I have to tell you, I'm not really sure how to do that. So some of the gating and scheduling controls that you can assign to every piece of content. And then once you set those up, you can update. And then let me just look here at some other course things. Okay, that takes me back to my,
Keep going.
keep going here.
Yeah. Oh, it's under assignments and scheduling. You there, I think you can continue on.
Ah, here we go. Assessment. Thank you, Mark. You can tell I don't set up course sections very often. And you're obviously a pro. So here's where you can change specifically global assessment options. So you can say how much you want, how many attempts you want, and see here, this is I know a particular pain point that these words mean really nothing because we don't know, we don't expose what these are. These are hard coded into when you develop the course package, you can set a recommended and a max value. Usually we try and set those if I'm developing a course and controlling for it, I usually try and set those at 3, like, 2 recommended, 3 max kind of thing. But again, as an instructor, I wouldn't know what those are. So sometimes, and in fact, we have this happen in the Spanish courses where right now it's only set at 1, and instructors are wanting more attempts. We have to go back into the actual like code to change that so that more attempts could be offered to regular instructors. Scoring model. So this is basically on assessments, which are we consider high stakes or quizzes. If you want to take the average of, if they have multiple attempts, what do you want to populate in the grade book essentially? Do you want to take their last attempt, maybe their best attempt, or their first attempt? And again, you can set a password on exams. I don't know any use cases for that or know of anyone that uses that. Does anyone on this call use those at all?
Very few people do it, and they usually drop that option.
Here's how you can handle like when there are due dates. If you would allow late submissions. So if students are wanting to submit after the date, what are your allowances for that? Same with late start, or similarly with late start.
And those are dates and times you can specify.
Okay. Dates and times. Grace period in minutes. So we've added this is functionality we've kind of added over the last few years, I think, where you're allowing students, we were experiencing issues where if if someone's power went out and they're in the middle of an exam, that's a bad example, but if they started late, how much later are you going to allow them to submit past the time limit, essentially? You can set a time limit in minutes. You can have feedback mode, which is basically how the feedback for every question in a quiz, there's usually a feedback. If you're familiar with how our quiz system works, go ahead. If you're familiar with how our quiz system works, there's students work through the answers to the questions, then hit submit, and then they can review their attempt, essentially. They can go back in, and that's when the feedback would display if it's after submit. But you, as an instructor, have the opportunity to gate that even more and wait till after the deadline passes, or make sure you yourself have to go in and release that. So if you want to wait until all the students have completed the exam before you allow the feedback to be seen, that's an option but you would have to go in and do that. And then I guess this review answers is similar to feedback, whether they want to see, whether you want to show them the correct answer on a quiz, on the quiz questions. And this targeted retakes is brand new. It's functionality that just landed, I want to say a few weeks ago. For those of you who might not be aware, you now have the option that for multiple attempts, the next attempt will only show the questions they got wrong on the first attempt and subsequent attempts. So for every attempt, it would only be a subset of the questions that they got wrong on previous attempts.
And the review answers doesn't show feedback. It just allows them to go back and look at previous questions. And I believe they can make changes. So,
Oh, interesting.
so that before they submit it, they can sort of review the test and say, oh, I got that one wrong, let me change the answer. And then they can submit it and get graded.
Oh, interesting.
I think it allows them to go backwards if the test is multiple pages as well.
I see, because you've already hit submit or next.
Next, yeah.
Yeah,
Did you ask about password?
I
Assessment
I
password?
wasn't really sure of the use cases for that.
Yeah, it's not commonly used, but remember too that the assessment options can be adjusted for each individual quiz or lesson test or assessment. So you could add passwords, different passwords to each module's quiz. And a few examples that you might want to do that, you might be having these proctored. So students cannot take the test unless they're in the room with the proctor, and the proctor would provide the password. A second option or a second thing would be you want students to achieve some prerequisites before you allow them to take the assessment. So you would wait until they submitted something or completed something, and then you would provide those passwords to students individually. And then I think it makes a lot of sense if you have your syllabus or your homework assignment and you have like a very specific communication to students, like, hey, please remember this is 60 minutes only. You want to have finished these 5 things before you take this quiz, and the quizzes are due by this time. Okay, did you read all that? The password is this. And it kind of makes sure that you've at least had their eyes run over some important information before they can actually go in and click start. So I think all of those it's nice to, it's kind of a one-off. It's not used all the time, but it is really nice to allow instructors to have those options.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim. Yeah, I wasn't sure how that might have been used, so that's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to click through here. Let's see. That's it. I think that's all the options for section setup. I'm going to go back to the managed course page. Now from here, if you've set this course up to be accessed by your students through an LMS, then it uses single sign-on so whatever their login is, login information is from the LMS. It allows them, it uses that information to create an account kind of in the background when they click through into the OLI course from their LMS. So they never need to know that a course key exists. In fact, they shouldn't know that a course key exists if it's set up that way. And they also wouldn't need to create an account. We've had a lot of discussion recently on the kind of problems that presents when students say, forget that they got into their course through an LMS and then go into OLI and log in and say, where's my course? It's not associated with that account if they created it separately. So there's some issues around that we're trying to work out and talk through. But essentially, if you use this course key, whoever you give that course key out to would be able to enter this course now. They, as a student, they have a very similar my courses page, and well, it's exactly like this, except they don't have create a new course, and they can just enter the course key here and it'll add them to the course. And it might, I believe it prompts them to create an account if they don't already have one. So that's how students get in, the different ways students get into a course. Let's see. Any other relevant things to go over? So of course, TAs, you want to add those separately. You could also, as an instructor, have the ability to, I believe, this just gives you a little report about the types of students in your course. So let's see what happens when you add a TA. You can get the name and you can permit the TA to do certain things. And that's a lot of different controls there. I think there's some obviously automatic, but then you can add additional functionality to that role.
I have a question at this juncture, Eric.
Go ahead. Please, yes.
We actually don't want anybody that's an instructor or a TA in the Canvas in our LMS to be viewed as a teaching assistant or instructor within our course, within the Student Cognition Toolbox. We want basically only the creators of the course to be viewed as instructors. And we've had it basically be defaulted somehow between the negotiation between our LMS and OLI that some people are automatically listed as instructors just by having an instructor characterization in our LMS. So we'd like to know how to kind of hardwire it from the OLI end to basically not permit teaching assistant or instructor privileges to anybody other than the course creators ourselves. I don't know if that made any sense.
I think it did, but let me parse it out so I can take a note about it. So I'll repeat it back in some way. So you want when TAs are assigned to the course,
basically the permissions that our LMS has, like those permissions that are like if you assign someone in the LMS as an instructor or you assign someone in the LMS as a TA, we don't want those people to retain that sort of privileged status in OLI. We basically don't want anybody to have privileged status in OLI other than the course creators. But it seems as if they somehow get that carryover status by being instructors or TAs in the LMS. So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Just let me say it a different way in how I wrote it here. So LMS permissions essentially persist into the OLI course. So if you're an instructor in the LMS, you have the instructor role in the LMS, you'll be automatically added as an instructor in the OLI course, but they might actually only be a student in that course. But because they have the role set at the LMS level, it's being used by OLI to assume that they're also an instructor.
Yes, so we want to be able to turn that off.
Right.
And the reason that's particularly problematic for us is because, as you probably are aware, our course builds, we have one course key for each version of our Student Cognition Toolbox, but a particular version of the Student Cognition Toolbox, like let's say it's the stats version, might be deployed to 5 different courses in our LMS. So for privacy reasons, we obviously don't want instructors in course A to be able to view student performance in course B.
Right.
And they actually can, based upon the privileges that they have, if they're carryover privileges. So we don't want anybody to be able to view student performance except for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem if they're labeled as a quote unquote instructor.
So just as some background, I don't have a technical solution for this, but OLI only knows your Canvas user's role from the role that they have in the course in Canvas. So if the person in Canvas has the role of instructor, OLI gives them the role of instructor. And you can imagine with all of the linkings to all the different Canvas instances that OLI has to do that. Like if Canvas has the person as an instructor, OLI has to make them instructor, because it would be a problem if OLI did not. Just like students have to be students, TAs have to be TAs. What I'm thinking is, so if there was a different role that you gave your instructors in Canvas, you could potentially work with, I'm not committing anybody, but you could potentially work with our technical team, the OLI technical team, to define a new role. So if you had, you know, whatever you wanted to call your role, or some existing role in Canvas, and then OLI could treat it as you wanted it to be treated. But all of what I said at the last part of that was just imaginary, at least at this point, because OLI's roles are student, TA, and instructor. And TAs and instructors, as you've mentioned, have access to student records. And it sounds like you don't want all of your instructors to have that instructor access in OLI. So I don't know if it helps just to have that background on how OLI knows what role your user from Canvas should have is from the Canvas definition.
Well, let me ask this, Kim. Is that set at the course level, or is that set at like a admin Canvas level? So can I be a student role in some Canvas course sections and an instructor in others, and whatever I am in that Canvas shell will persist into OLI? So
Absolutely, because
Okay.
you think of it, the easiest use case to think of there is sometimes a student is a student in some sections, but they're a TA in other sections. And that's how OLI knows they're a TA instead of a student. But it is, I mean, food for thought in the bigger picture. If we're talking about Torus, it would be really nice to have not only the role that was just mentioned of someone who is, you know, a teacher of the course, but not able to see student records, although quite frankly, that's a student in our eyes. And then secondly, the tutor role, because a lot of places have tutors that they want to be able to come in like a TA, but they don't want them to be able to see student records.
I'll throw in another small wrench, and that is it's not just Canvas. The interface, LTI, we need to have it work with any supported LMS, whether it's Canvas, Moodle, or Joe Bob's Drill and Kill.
So in terms of Torus, there actually exists in the LTI standard, all of this. So you can actually tell someone who is what's called a platform instructor from a course level instructor, and etc. Torus just needs to basically define some requirements on what should happen for what rules, basically. From the legacy standpoint, I'm guessing that legacy probably treats TAs on the same level as instructor. It's probably checking to see if they have instructor or TA rules, and then it just treats them equivalent, right? In Torus, we could do something like more fine-grained rules, like maybe there's a checkbox that gives TAs full instructor access and you could uncheck it or something. So that's all possible. We just need to like define what exactly Torus should do in those instances.
Yeah, it's been my understanding that LTI is in many ways both more and less powerful than either Canvas or legacy OLI, like having greater granularity for permissions and other things like that.
Yeah, that's actually true because Torus uses a newer version of the LTI standard. It uses LTI 1.3, where I believe legacy system is still on LTI 1.1 1.0 or something.
And although Canvas is very popular, it's not the only LMS out there that we have to support.
It sounds like though, Torus already allows more finer grained controls, but it also sounds like Lauren could actually control for this now by making sure that whoever they don't want, by checking the role in the Canvas instance first before those folks click through into OLI.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, that would be a good solution if I was allowed to change the course role in Canvas, but I actually can't because in Canvas, they are actually the instructor or the TA. So I can't actually mess with their Canvas sort of roles because we're embedding the Student Cognition Toolbox into pre-existing domain-specific courses. So I can't modify their roles. What I need to be able to do, we've kind of like accepted, I don't know, we've accepted that we don't have control of this in the current climate. We're fine with that. Like we've made our peace with it. We're like, well, I guess people could technically go in there and see other students' stuff. We don't like that, but we've just kind of like, we've eaten it. But we would really like in Torus to be able to not allow people to view students, despite their role in Canvas. So it sounds like maybe that can be built in. We can also have further conversations about this, you know, why that's important. I don't want to take over the conversation. I just wanted to let you know that that's something that we're thinking about.
Right, but no, it was worth the discussion because it was good to know what more control we have in Torus already. And to Eli's point, like what should the defaults be? I think the defaults that already exist in Legacy are okay, but being able to toggle these check marks that are automatically part of this role. So for a TA role, it's permitted to, and I can't uncheck some of these. So just having more control over being able to say, okay, this particular TA, I don't want to be able to grade student responses. They're going to be doing something else like just tutoring,
Yeah, and one more thing, there are finer grain permissions that are settable by the Unix sysadmins from the command line. For example, computing at Carnegie Mellon always asks for particular permissions to manipulate the roster in ways that they find advantageous for them. So it may be for a limited number of cases, we can define what to ask for, and then we can go do it.
Yeah.
So that's worth pursuing at least as a way of trying to improve the current situation.
Okay. So that was a lot around permissions, TAs, roles. That's a big chunk of what is part of, managing a course section. Do you folks do we want to talk about any kind of gating and scheduling at all? Do you guys make use of that in different ways?
Originally, we used to love the fact that OLI 2 or 3 versions ago, you could do the gating and the rearranging at a much finer level. Maybe going down 1 or 2 levels from where you are limiting now might be advantageous.
So let's talk about that for a second. So you're talking about like page level.
Well, we have page, then section, subsection, sections, and then up higher than that. We were able to go originally page level gating, but rearrange everything in whichever order we wanted. Not that we encouraged it, but we were able to do that. I think being able to go down into what we call a lesson, which I think is a module in OLI speak, might be better than just only doing the module level rearranging.
That's helpful.
We would like the ability to do modular selection. So check or not check modular selection. We don't really need rearrangement, but we would love modular selection for individual choices. But the real thing that we would love would be gating at the page level. That would be amazing to have gating at the page level and then the modular level so that students cannot proceed without completing items.
Yeah, right now this is all can only be done at the unit level, right? Or unit, I think, or individual assessments. Or individual assessments. But you can't do it at the modular or page level yet. That would be. So give me an example of what you would use the page level gating for. I mean, would you really want to be able to go in and put a schedule and gating on every page or just certain pages, and why?
We would love it if basically students could only proceed through the toolbox on a page by page basis, because that would actually kind of force them to click through each page, which would probably lead to greater completion of the formative assessments and the surveys that they often skip. As we talked about before, if they just go into the grade book, then they can basically just complete the checkpoint quizzes and not really work through the modules. So we would love them to have to go through on a page by page basis to be able to control that. That would be absolutely optimal for us. One of the things that we also talked about last time would be if the grade book itself didn't just include the checkpoint quizzes, but could also have those summative assessments, not with grades, but just with like checks, that would indicate to students that there is more than just a checkpoint quiz. So that was like on my hopes and dreams list, that in Torus, the grade book could include basically all forms of questions, not graded, but just as a check mark to indicate to students that there is more than just a checkpoint quiz. So in the absence of gating, that would actually signal to the students there is more than just a quiz to complete.
Right, that's super interesting because that view of the grade book, I don't even think students don't see the grade book, so we would need a different indicator, almost like a I can imagine just spitballing, like a progress indicator bar at the top to show like, there's still stuff left they haven't done somehow.
Yes. And we would love that. We would love a progress bar. I think a progress bar to show up within the actual course would be very helpful to students. I think it would be great if that was integrated with the gradebook. I know students can see their grades for the checkpoint quizzes and they can see whether they've completed them or not. They can also see, I think, for us, whether or not they've completed a survey that has a check. So that's really helpful that the survey components that you guys created for us have a check in the gradebook. That's really great.
Yeah, because then you can see everything at a glance in terms of progress with the student, but you can see it with that. I dare say stupid because it's really hard to like read, which is the filling of the cell with the blue bar.
Yeah, that's not so great. I mean,
yeah,
at least it's not actually helpful at all for our
No.
standpoint to see the blue cell. It's helpful. I always open those so that I can see a check mark or a blank. And then for the checkpoint quizzes, I see a grade. So I'm assuming students see basically the same thing, but just for the individual.
I don't think they have access.
Yes, they see it on their interface. It's called My Scores. And it's exactly the same as the grade book, but it's it's only their row.
I see.
The second component of what they still need to work on can be viewed from the syllabus. Under each module heading, there's an available practice link. I mean, it's not, it's in a whole separate place, but basically what what is being asked, where a student can see what is to be done and what hasn't been done, would be through that available practice link in the module, in the in the OLI syllabus.
Thank you, Kim. That's helpful because I'm not really that versed in what students see. So that's helpful. And is that toggleable, bad word, is that controlled by the instructor in that show mastery? Does that allow or students have a view of their grade book kind of no matter what, and then the show mastery check mark that the instructor controls, is that allows them to do almost like a learning dashboard view into their data, right?
Yeah. I'm taking a look at the student dashboard information for one of our French courses from a couple semesters ago. The student will see a red, yellow, green dot
Mhm.
for each learning objective. And they can drill down and see which exercises they've done and review those. So between the blue bar grade book display and the learning dashboard display, you get a sense of not only what they've done, but how well they're understanding it.
Okay. That's good. So we just need to kind of, I think, consolidate some of these features we already have into like a more of a dashboardy way of viewing them, both from the instructor side and the student side. I also wanted to capture, because it's not something I'm usually in favor of, but when it comes to progress, we maybe should even consider including some elements of gaming. And what I mean by that is, using that progress bar, maybe even showing, maybe even having the ability to show the progress of students in the aggregate so that you can like compare yourself against what the class is doing. Those are about as far as I would go in terms of gaming capabilities. I mean, like, or functionality, a leaderboard type situation, but nothing more than that. But just as I throw that out there more as an inspiring comment to see what you guys felt about those things. No comment?
Yeah, I guess like to me, it doesn't matter if students can see how other students are progressing. There I can see in other courses, there can be a use for that sort of social element. In our group, it doesn't really matter. But I feel like students kind of access things at two different levels. The first way they access things is like actually going into the course and working their way through it. And then the other way that students are accessing things is actually just through the sort of My Scores feature. I don't think any of our students are utilizing that third way that was described. So if that third way could somehow be embedded with the My Scores piece, I think that that would be a way for students to really gauge what they have and haven't done. I think 3 entry points is kind of a lot for students.
Right. Yeah, and Lauren, that third way that Mark was describing is when you check this box here in the managed course page, that gives students access to that third view.
I have never heard of my students accessing that way. Maybe that is the sweet spot. Maybe that's what we should be telling them to do instead of the My Scores. We direct them to check their progress through My Scores. That's how we tell them to do it. But maybe we've missed the mark here and we should be asking them to look in there.
Yeah, try that. Try that out and see if that gives you what you need, or what you think your students need as well, because it does give a little more, I think, finer grain drill down. It'll give them that, like Mark said, the blue, the red, green, gray that is kind of used for the dashboard as well for the instructor. And I'll probably demo that in another meeting, just because we'll probably circle back around to dashboards again and frequently. So that was some stuff around gating and scheduling and rearranging. So these are some big chunks, like, permissions, being able to control the content, being able to control how students access the content. We've touched on how students view their progress and if that's possible. I'm going to not switch gears, but I just want to show kind of like a different view of these controls. So Hal has been putting together a list of all the types of controls that are offered at a section level. And he went a step further and actually like grouped them into these labels. So these higher level labels. So for account creation, so we could even talk here, and I can even put notes right in this document about how you feel about each of these kinds of experiences, really. Like, so when you, what's been the experience, and it might have been a while since you've done this, but in getting an instructor account or getting others an instructor account, is that difficult? Is that hard? Is it easy and it's fine the way it is? Are there other ideas for account creation? I'll just go through these at a high level and then we can circle back around to those things that you care about most. So account maintenance, like being able to change passwords, the details, students have the ability to opt out of their data being used in research, request account deletion. Then there's platform navigation features. So that's registration. We already talked about that. Login, support. Oh yeah, we could probably do better around some things around support that I'm thinking of also doing is adding the ability for students to offer feedback like have a very prominent link on every page, maybe in the border of the platform, that allows students to basically give feedback on anything. And this will allow us to collect more information around, I think, diversity, equity, inclusion, and like what resonates with students. I'm not thinking of just like typo fixes. I'm thinking of like any kind of feedback that a student wants to make. Let's see, any kind of announcements. I actually don't know how announcements are seen by users at the moment. So any feedback on that would be helpful. We went through the course builder. We've talked about access, and we went through the managed course stuff. I'm just looking at if there's anything here I missed. Gradebook, learning dashboard. These will be big chunks of things we'll talk about at a later time. And then navigation in general. So do any of those hit home or resonate with the folks in the call? Anything that you have really strong opinions about?
I really like the capability through our external tool of being able to have that course key, that integration point for students where they don't have to log into OLI as a student. I want to retain that ability. That was something I think you went over like 45 minutes ago, but I wanted to say that we want to keep that so that students are entering directly through their LMS. We wanted students to be able to continue to enter directly into their LMS. You said that there maybe had been some difficulties with some students originally entering through the LMS and then trying to enter as students. I've only received a couple of emails from students with that problem directly over all the times that we've done this with like 8,000 students.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
The reason it became a topic of discussion is because it became aware that like Kim probably handles at least one of these a day. And you can imagine when at the beginning of the semester, there's even, probably double the amount that you're answering in terms of, students aren't understanding where they're supposed to be. But I'm glad you've had a good experience with that, but it sounds like you have had a couple times where students were confused.
Yeah.
And you
But-
had to figure it out.
Students are undeniably always going to find something to be confused about.
True.
So I would say the number of the thousands of emails that I have fielded over the last 4 years, there have only been a handful of students, like I can count them on one hand, that
Ooh.
have misunderstood that they always need to enter through Canvas. So that has not been an issue for us. I do not doubt that's been an issue for other courses, but that has not been our problem.
Okay. Do you have other, like, speaking of the emails you get from students, like what are some other access issues that are top of mind for you?
All of the questions I get, like 95% of the questions have to do with students being unsure if they have completed the toolbox.
Huh.
That is the vast majority of the emails that I field, where they are really unsure about this My Scores business. They're like, I don't know how to check and see if I've completed the student cognition toolbox. So there is a disconnect between the entry point of completing the set of activities and then going and checking through My Scores, even though I have specific instructions on how to do that. So I would love it if those two could be somehow integrated to where they could actually view, like as I said, in a progress bar, they can view that they've completed the different elements without going in through a separate spot. If they have to go in through two different views, it seems too much for them.
Yeah. Let me just even, I wonder if I can even demo this. It's an easy way to demo this because I don't think I have a student account. I only have instructor but let me find, I think I can show this with a dashboard demo. Which is associated with my admin account. Just because we have time, and I don't think there's a whole bunch more to talk through here. I should have gone to, I'm not even an instructor in this course. But I do have the ability to believe. Yeah, so I can go into learning dashboard. Students will see, I'll show you what students will see. If I go to an individual student, and I actually gotta find one first. I think I'm in here.
Yeah, you can start typing a name and. if there's
Yeah, I
something-
just don't know what names are even in here. I gotta find a name. I think I might be one. I think that yeah, Norm's one. I'll look at Norm's. Let's look at Norm's progress here. So this, I think, is what they see. They see the learning objective and a red. So the gray would be stuff that isn't done.
Correct.
And then if they open up, here's all the activities associated with this learning objective. And you can see here, this one hasn't been completed. So Lauren, it sounds like this is exactly what you need.
So if they look at this instead of the My Scores, they'll have a better indication of all of the activities that they're missing.
That's right.
Yeah, I think this would be ideal, and this would work for really sort of like interested and dedicated students.
Yeah.
I wonder about like the actual implementation of this for students that are struggling to even look at the My Scores tab,
Yeah.
which is much more simplistic, and then just like, did I do this or not? I have students that don't even understand like how to read that.
Right.
Which
Okay.
is a lot easier to read, I think. I mean, this is great for someone who's willing to look at it at this level, and the dedicated student would. But if we're having trouble with something that's basically like a check or an X or a blank,
Yeah. Let me, so you need some combination of these views, almost like a toggle where some students can just see the one view, but then you could toggle it to get a more detailed view if you so choose.
Yes, and it would be great if that was even a feature that could be viewed within, like when they're reading through the modules. Wouldn't that be great? I don't know if that would ever be possible.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Again, like that progress bar as they're going through that,
Yeah.
and like having it visible in the course pages as where they're working. So it's like a constant kind of reminder, you still have work left.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
is there any concern that if you provide students with a list of all the activities, I'm going to be honest, if I'm a student and I have to do the activities, I'm not going to read the pages. I'm just going to go to that list of the activities and do the activities. So is there a concern? I mean, I agree that it would be very helpful for me as a student to see like a progress bar over on the side, like, hey, you're on page 25 of 50 in some visual formats. And especially when I come back and I see, okay, now I'm on page 26. But if you just, again, so my question is there a concern that if you provide students with a list of activities, that they just go through and click through all the activities and don't actually read the page content?
There is a concern, and that's already happening, but it's happening through the My Scores. So I can look at the timestamps of when the students are completing the checkpoint quizzes, and they're already using the My Scores to do that. I see.
So are they doing well on the quizzes?
No. So the students are basically they just click, they have discovered that they just complete what's available in the My Scores. And so I'm saying it would be better in a way to have the My Scores also include the summative activities, because right now they are absolutely doing that. There is a large subset of student that is just completing the formative activities available through the My Scores and is not reading through the student cognition tool.
Oh, let me correct something you said. You're calling the quizzes formative, where what's showing up in
Sorry,
the
summative.
Yeah.
Sorry, the summative. Yes.
You
So
want
they're
them to
just
do the formative practice. And I
Yes.
think, Kim, what you're suggesting isn't necessarily the same problem, because what we would encourage is, if students don't have to read, if those activities and formative questions were built in a way with good targeted hints and feedback, then they shouldn't need to read, is the kind of the hypothesis, that they could get the learning that they need through those activities. I mean, ideally, if we could create just a course of activities, that's what it would be. But to your point, not all instructors, feel that way. They want them to read. They want to know that the students read the material and just didn't skip to the quizzes. But I think if they do all the formative practice leading up to the quizzes, that alone will help them on the quizzes. Because of the way we design courses so tightly around skills.
Yes, absolutely. If the students actually did the formative questions, that would help them on the quizzes. So what I generally see with students that only do the quizzes is very low quiz scores. So I just see like back to back, you've completed all the quizzes for the entire course within 10 minutes. And I see scores of 0, 25, 30, 0, 25, 30. So I know based upon the timestamps that those students have misused the My Scores.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a danger of that, and of those listed elements, and we're living that danger. We see that in a large, not the majority of our students, but there is a large proportion that do that.
Right. You need a combination of the My Scores and that learning dashboard, that student dashboard view, so that you understand, because if they're going to use that as their guide for completing the course, instead of going page to page, at least the formative practice is showing up as a thing they need to do.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That would be better than them just seeing the My Scores page.
Yeah. Right now they would have to go to 2 different places to see that. And then that's not helping completion of the formative activities. It's actually kind of hurting it.
It is.
Okay. Great.
It's a shame because we know the way that we would like students to use this. Like we know how we would like students to be able to use these different viewers and these different windows. And I think in practice, we see a lot of students taking these shortcuts And we
Yeah.
only see that when, when you have, 7,000 students go through a course, you start to see these
Yeah.
patterns.
We almost need to design the platform such that we kind of almost, what was I going to say? I was going to say like trick the students into doing the form of practice. But that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, if they're give them a view to use in that way, but make it so that they get the feeling that they have to complete everything in that view. So that I think would lend itself to more students doing the formative practice, because they'll kind of consider them almost like quizzes because they're
Yes.
at the same level in that list as the quizzes.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think that would help.
Yeah, I think that would go a long way to getting more completion of the formative activities. We kind of, in the current system, of like separated out formative and summative in a way that I just through this conversation makes me think is not helping the student. It's helping the instructor maybe a little bit, but not the student.
I think it's very useful for the instructor,
Mhm.
but I agree that it allows the students to avoid those activities,
Yeah.
which is not my intention. And I see a
No.
lot of students avoiding those activities.
Well, right. We actually put a lot of thought and energy into those activities because of all the detailed feedback we put in, the thoughtful distractors that we select. I mean, it's almost like all of that thought going into the design, the careful design of formative practice is for naught. If students really just want to get a grade, That's great though. That's good to know it's always good to just talk this stuff out to get a sense for how students are really perceiving these courses and how they work through them. And I know you're not speaking for all students, you're speaking for the handful that are essentially trying to do as little as possible, right? And that's not all students, but we can do things that help both types of students, I think, in the same way. Well, we're at time. I can't believe that went so fast. So again, I cannot thank you guys enough for just showing up and talking through these features and functionality. Even, I think we get some new folks in occasionally, but, just spending this time, Lauren and Mark, you two are such super users that I really appreciate you coming to these meetings because I learn a lot from just even talking to the two of you. And I think everyone on the call does too. We have a lot of folks who just, support these courses and development. And it's just great to hear your experiences. So I cannot thank you enough.
Well, thank you for hosting this and for being so receptive to, the problems and the observations that we've had along the way. Yes, I mean, I don't want to diminish the fact that some students use the platform exactly as intended. And probably most students use the platform exactly as intended. But I'm always trying to eliminate potential shortcuts.
Right. Yeah, I don't blame you. And just so you know, what we do with these sessions is we turn them into, we re-listen to the video and revisit the notes and turn these ideas into user stories that then can be put into our queue for feature development. So this is just want you to know that this goes a long way to making sure that we're building the new platform with all the capabilities and lessons learned of the existing system and beyond that. So it's definitely worth your while to keep providing us with all this great feedback. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend. And I should tell you, or wait, let me go on in the last minute to tell you what the next meeting will be about. Get back to my, what did I do? So next meeting is April 1st. I unfortunately will not be able to be at that meeting. That's my daughter's 16th birthday. And so I will be planning her festivities for that Friday. But Greg will be here. He is leading our migration efforts in terms of planning out and keeping things moving towards migrating all of our courses. And so he'll be here to walk you guys through just at a high level what's happening with migration. There's a lot of moving parts, as you can imagine, that we have to kind of all dovetail together, but he'll talk you through where we are at that point in time and what our plans are. I believe even Norm's planning to come to that meeting to help answer any questions about migration as well and what our plans are for the future. So definitely come April 1st. And until then, enjoy and have a great weekend.
Great, Erin, I just wanted to let you know, if you do, like, if through these meetings you decide we should be part of the migration, like, because we have a lot of unique, I don't know, we have a lot of unique, if you decide that it's time at any point, you just let us know, okay?
I will. I'll
Because
give you a, I'll give you a quick preview right now, not preview, but like your courses are up the chain. The only thing preventing us from migrating your courses at the moment, I believe, is the survey functionality. And I believe we're prioritizing that. So once that's in place, then I think most of your courses move over, except for the combined courses, right? Like, because, you know, chemistry and math support comes a little bit later. So we'll be able to probably migrate your base student cognition toolbox before we can the other combo courses. And Mark, languages are a little further down just because a lot of different neat functionality that you guys use. But what's cool about that and what I'm excited about in the languages is it's going to unlock functionality for a lot of people, because right now it's only in your projects, and some of the activities that you use, I think would be beneficial for other projects as well. And so I'm really excited about that. But yes, Lauren, I will be holding specific meetings for courses. So we've already had some meetings, languages we haven't, we will be. We've had with like logic and proofs, because they also have some functionality, special functionality needs. So we're starting to have those meetings. So just hold tight. I'm trying to get like an overall roadmap in place so that I know what's the best timing to schedule those meetings and priority of folks. But yes.
From our end, we're in no rush.
Okay.
Like, absolutely no rush. I'm just bringing it up that whenever you're ready, because it seems like in these meetings, we're like, oh, we could do this or that. And I was like, so if there's any utility of us going ahead with the migration so that when you're ready, you can trial out some of these like very bizarre questions that I have for you. Like, oh, but we need to do this or that. And now it's all theoretical. So
yeah,
we just wait for your command.
Okay. As soon as we get surveys in place, what we'll probably do is pilot a move of your course, and then we'll sit down and talk through what else might be needed for you to actually deliver that to folks. And same with languages. We'll probably do something similar. Once we get the functionality in place, we'll do a pilot migration, see what that does, and then talk to you about, okay, what are the other aspects around that you need, like not just support for dialogue, for example, a dialogue activity, but what other maybe even administrative functionality you might need and make use of for delivering those courses. So it's like all of that kind of has to come together at the right times.
Yeah, and just another kink in the process. Our development period is summer. So the earlier we can find out what we need to do, the better we'll be able to actually do it.
Okay, that's super helpful. And by summer, we will have more direction for you for sure, and more conversations. So that's good to know that timing. Thank you.
This is a complete aside, Erin, but
that's fine.
We've been doing a ton of advertising for our webinar. Did you get an invite to our webinar?
I did.
Okay, good.
I might have gotten 2 actually, which is fine. I
might have gotten 5. I received like 15. So I was like, you've surely received one, but I just wanted to make sure that you did, and to feel free to forward that to anyone in your team. Like,
I will.
Great. Okay.
I will share it out more widely, and I think I already marked off my calendar for it as well, so I'll be there. Great. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Erin.
So nice to see you all. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Saving the transcript.